you gonna hold me down? I said, I'm going gray in Tinseltown.
You're a beast.
There's no way you're gonna hold me down, 'cause I was born to entertain, and
Show
you
them what a
can't
real woman looks
take
like.
that away. I'm going gray all in your face. You can't replace this. It's going down, we're going gray in Tinseltown.
Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Going Gray in Tinseltown. I'm your host, Mandy May Cheetham. For those of you who have been listening since the beginning, thank you so much, and thank you for being patient while I took a couple of weeks off to take a breath and stop being so intense with myself about this hair. This week I have such an amazing show for you, so I promise you it will have been worth the wait. One of the questions that I explore with my special guest this week is kind of like, what if I die and I haven't lived? You know, and how we start to look at our lives differently as we get older. I remember having a conversation with my mom recently about what I've been going through facing my age and thinking about how many years I have left on this planet and really deciding to take action in my life toward, living the life that I always planned that I was going to live. And my mom was like, most people don't go through that until they're in their 60s, but for some reason I'm going through it now at 44. And hallelujah, because I think the planet is going to be better for it after what I got to show you guys in the next couple of months. I'm shooting a proof of concept for a TV show that I wrote called Trophies, which is about cheerleading. I don't know if I've mentioned this before, but I spent 10 years running a cheerleading company and teaching cheerleading in 14 countries around the world, which is so cool because my guest just wrote a book about a soccer coach and sort of the community around this kids soccer team I think it's in Beverly Hills-ish area, somewhere around the LA world. So I was thinking about this newfound place I'm going in my life with how I'm directing myself toward really living the life of my dreams. And I've been watching Martin Scorsese's masterclass because I'm getting ready to direct my first thing, this proof of concept, at the end of September, and thinking, you don't get to be Marty without shooting a short film and, trying to shoot a whole bunch of other films before you start to make your masterpieces later on in life. Like, you have to take chances and try and do the things you're really afraid of. My guest this week is Paesel. And she, first of all, is an incredible actress. And she's one of those actresses when you're watching a show and someone comes on the screen and you're like, oh my God, this actress. And Brett plays Rita in Transparent. And that's the babysitter. I think she shows up in the first episode, actually. And I remember watching it and just being like, oh my God, this show, this actress, this storyline, and freaking out. And I cannot believe that I got to have her in my closet and on this show. I was really fangirling. And when I was editing the podcast, I just feel like I was trying really hard to be cool. So please forgive me for the first 30 minutes or so where I'm trying to be cool and impress Brett. So Brett, as I mentioned, was an actress and consulting producer on Transparent and I Love Dick, which I've renamed as I Used to Love Dick, but now I'm kind of over it. Brett's incredible because she's also a Studio 54 voyeur, an improviser, a mom, a vivacious goddess whose eyes pierce your skull. And she's a seller of pilot scripts, which is, at least 10% of the battle, and a best-selling author. She's just written this book, Everything Is Just Fine, which I actually loved reading, not just because I'm a freak about the whole world of parents and soccer coaches and organized sport for kids, having lived in it for so long, but also because the characters were just so clean. I don't know how else to describe it, but we talk about it in the podcast, and I'll get to it, I promise, eventually. But I just want to mention her first book was called Mommies Who Drink, Sex, Drugs, and Other Distant Memories of an Ordinary Mom. And I feel like that's a really great gift to give someone who's about to have a baby. So I know I'm going to buy it for a couple of my friends who are about to make that life experience happen. So without further ado, the marvelous Mrs. Paesel. There's a thing that I've been sort of noticing lately with television shows, because I've been researching them intensely. And by researching them intensely, I mean binge watching when I don't want to face my life. Is that a lot of them start out comedically and move toward more drama. And I wonder, as an expert, if you know if that is something that people do on purpose. You know, like Breaking Bad, for example, was this comedic duo initially. You know, when I went back and watched the pilot again, I was like, this is hilarious. These two are magical in their timing. And then it got so dark, and it's like, do we use humor in the beginning to make is that like the making the audience love you part, or is it just the natural tendency of humans to go dark?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think the things are more palatable when you start with humor and people warm up faster. That's why people call it a warm-up act. You know what I mean? But I also think that when you're trying to sustain a story over time, it kind of requires you to go deep. For the most part, there are still like comedies like The Office that replicates the same thing. Michael's going to do something crazy and everybody's going to react. Those are more sitcom-y, but if you do anything that's past sitcom, I think it's just a natural thing that ends up happening because you're telling deeper stories about people's wants and needs, and then it just gets darker because people are dark.
Yeah.
I think.
And also it's like a yin and yang thing too. Like, is the comedy fulfilling if there's no like balance to it, you know? Like the payoff is so much better when you're in a scene and you're crying, and then you're like, oh, here's the space for the joke, you know? And then it's like, oh, thank goodness we have the balance. I want to start the discussion around Diane in your novel, and the scene with her. And I call it a scene because the way you write is so visual. First of all, I actually got lost in your book in the sense of like I was thinking about the characters when I wasn't reading it.
Oh, I love hearing that.
I know.
Because I thought it was just me.
I believe you.
Because to me, they're my friends, and I have whole other scenarios with them and stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, they were with me, you know,
Cool,
which
that's
is
nice
always
to
a
hear.
sign of a great book. And it's not, like, I think it speaks to your experience as a writer in many mediums that it's not heavy-handed in any way. And the emails and, you know, because I find, unfortunately, I feel this way about cheerleading stories that I see and read and hear. They're always like one note. And often stories about parenting and this kind of, you know, premise is very one note, and it's disrespectful and condescending and like, you know, taking away from the whole human beings that are walking through this life of trying to raise kids and still be like, you know, not visible, cool, whatever. And like, you know, the emails don't feel like a device. It's like a way of deepening the relationships with the characters, like the typos and the times they're sending the emails and the way they sign their names, like with a letter. It's so obnoxious, you know, and you do it too.
But I do a little b.
I noticed.
It's like my character who does it with a letter does it with a capital letter. That says everything.
Well, you're just, you know that like it's a marketing thing to choose the small letter, right? That's part of your business skills as well. So I just loved it. I really appreciated it. And also because I'm working on this cheerleading show, it was so awesome to see how each character was so specific, and their email address, like the, you know, where they work and all the, God, I could go on about that forever, and I might later. But this one specific scene that I loved, that I had marked in the book, is where Alejandro is at Diane's, and I guess he's sort of realizing that there's something more than just fucking going on between them, or he wants there to be, and maybe she does too. And he's talking to her about her apartment or her house. And why do you have a candle snuffer if you don't have candles? And I think it speaks so much to what I'm experiencing and what a lot of the listeners of the podcast have been experiencing, that I'm guessing are experiencing through the emails they send me, is about dismantling the image of yourself that you've created. And your home is just an extension of your person. So I thought it was so interesting for a younger man who we would want to characterize as being someone who would be superficial is the one to say something so beautiful and poignant and layered and obvious, about why do you create a self that isn't true to you?
Well, he's the outsider. And so, and he's from another culture. And so he can see what the people in the culture can't see. Mm-hmm. And so, and he's been in a lot of those bedrooms because he has sex with a lot of those women. Uh-huh. And so it suddenly, it would occur to him in a way that it wouldn't to anyone else. It's sort of that, David Foster Wallace uses that joke about 2 old fish and 2 young fish. You know that?
No.
Oh, I love this joke. It's at the beginning of his Kenyan address. I don't think it's his, but he tells the joke. And he says, 2 old fish are swimming by 2 young fish. And one of the old fish says to one of the young fish, "How's the water?" And the young fish says, "What's water?"
Uh-huh.
Because they're in it.
Right.
So Diane can't see it because she's in it.
Right. And that's the experience I was mentioning to you earlier that I didn't know I was in. Mm-hmm. Is like, walking around. I didn't even think of myself as a hot chick, but I had created this persona on Instagram and social media, wherever, what I thought what my value was, and didn't realize how much weight I was putting on it until I actually decided that it no longer served me. I didn't even know it was a thing. What no longer served me was not dyeing my hair.
But that just opened it all up.
You opened the gates.
Right. That's interesting. Yeah. I think that, what I was trying to explore in the book and what I'm trying to explore in my life, and I talk about a lot as a writing teacher, is that I feel like most human beings are just looking for connection. Mm-hmm. Bottom line, we want to be loved, we want to be seen, we want to connect. Even Donald Trump wants to connect and be loved. Mm-hmm. He just goes about it in very strange ways. Mm-hmm. And so it's what we do to get that connection that's where where we disconnect and we don't even know why. Mm-hmm. But one of the things we do is create this persona through the things that we own, the way that we dress, the way that we decorate our houses, and all of those things. And we think we're saying, this is who I am. Mm-hmm. And we're not half wrong about that, actually, because we, as people, sort of assign value to different things, and so it makes sense that we would do that, but it doesn't give us the connection we crave. Mm. And so at the end, we feel a little empty, and we don't know why, because we did all the right things.
Mm. And sometimes we're creating those things or curating that experience because we want to use it as a means to impress others or to get them to connect with us. And that's the part where we get lost because it's not true, right? Right. Or what was true when I created this experience isn't true anymore, which I think is a big part of what happens when this midlife thing, for me anyway, has been what was true for me 5 years ago, 2 years ago, isn't true for me now. Mm-hmm. So what does this look like? And I don't know. Because I was so obsessed with my image before, and by obsessed, I actually didn't think I was, but now I know that I'm on the spectrum of the, narcissist disease that we're all experiencing. Yeah, I didn't know. I don't remember what my point was. I have craft disease. Can't remember if
I don't think it's unusual. Yeah. And it certainly is what Diane's going through, is just sort of reassessing all of the choices that she made that she didn't even know she was making. Mm-hmm. That's the point. We don't even know we're doing it.
Mm-hmm. She's such an interesting character because she gives, like, she's a mess, you know, but she's the one who ends up giving all of these gifts to everyone. Like even Jackie, you know, with being honest with her. I actually think that with her honesty is the gift.
Yeah.
Holy shit. Yeah. I mean,
well, if connection is what we crave, then my feeling is you can't get satisfying connection if you're coming from a place of inauthenticity. You have to be at least honest with yourself in order, because if you get it back and you weren't authentic, then it doesn't mean anything, right? If they're responding to your persona and not to you behind it going, hey, look at me, I'm here,
Right.
then it's meaningless anyway.
Yeah.
And so she's the character who gets that. At least gets that. She gets that she's a mess. But if somebody's even responding to her as a mess, then at least it's real.
right. Yeah. And I think part of this experience for me right now is about exactly that. Is like, I don't want to have to be what you want me to be in order to express my artist. And if this system isn't going to support me in the way that I want to express the artist, then I'll create one that will. And, you know, the end result, I don't even know what that's going to look like, but I can't think about it. I just have to make the art that inspires me.
Well, but I think that's the true beauty of aging. And I don't mean to be Pollyanna about it. There are tons of challenges. There are a shit ton of challenges. I know that. But that the fact that I only have 20 to 30 more viable years on this planet gets rid of a lot of bullshit. In myself as well. I just don't have the time. I don't have the time to play games with myself, and even less time to play games with other people. And I think that, and in terms of art, it's the same thing. I don't want to waste time doing something that's been so compromised it's not fulfilling anymore. And I think that's where, I think if you are in any state of questioning or, again, that deep dive into authenticity, you get there at some point as you get older.
Yeah, because it really is just a series of choices. It's like, I recognized when I got to this point that it was, I can choose to keep pretending or I can choose to go walk through the fire. I don't know what that looks like or feels like or if I'm going to make it out to the other side, but I definitely know what pretending and hiding and being unconscious is. And that's a thing I'm not willing to do anymore, you know?
I just read this quote that was ascribed, I think, to James Joyce and Ulysses, that the longest way home is the shortest route, or something like that. That going through all of this hard stuff is actually the shortest way to get home.
Yeah.
We just don't know that. We
makes
keep
so
trying
much
to make
sense.
shortcuts and it doesn't work.
Yeah. Ugh. Because the shortcuts are really just avoiding the demon.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and that's, I mean, I talk about, I think you're talking about it in terms of hair right now, but I remember as an actor going through my early 40s and everybody having work done. And I have tremendous amount of sympathy for people who make the choice to get work done. I don't want to get into that so much. But to me personally, it felt like just putting off the inevitable of coming to terms with my aging, coming to terms with the fact that the outside core had become something different and foreign to me. And I just thought, well, I'm still going to have to deal with it at the end. You know what I mean? Like, so what's the point?
Yeah. But unless my eyesight goes first and then...
But it still will be manifest in the way people treat you. So you still got to get there.
Yeah, I think that's part of it. I'm like, you know, fuck you. You're not going to age me. I'm going to age me. Watch. I'm just going to go gray. Now what are you going to do with me? Like, you know, I get so... aggressive about that. I don't know what. Still got to figure that out.
I think that's funny that you use the word aggressive because I'm fairly aggressive about telling my age. And I have some friends who get really frustrated with me because they know that if they're my friends, people will know that they are also 58 or in that general zone. And they're always like, Brett, you don't have to walk into a room and basically say, I'm Brett and I'm 58 years old. But it is that kind of like, God damn it, I'm not going to be embarrassed about this. Like the most embarrassing thing in my life is that I survived.
I know. I was like that with my best friend in Toronto. We would go out and she would always be flaunting her age. And I remember I brought her to some industry parties at the film festival or whatever. And I was like, before, you cannot say how old you are. You can't, I won't work. I was just like, I'll never work again if you're, and now I'm that person. Now I'm 43. I'm 43, everyone. I'm 43. My son is 26 because you know what else? I was hiding the age of my child.
Oh, yes. People do that too, yeah.
I mean, I said it, but I didn't. The thing that came afterward was always, well, how old are you? And then it's like, then I feel the shame not only of being 43, but also of having had a child at 17. So then there's all kinds of math going on. And it's just like, ugh, I don't want to wear that anymore. That, and I also like, okay, I think I've told this story before, podcasters, so please forgive me. But I was on a streetcar in Toronto one time, and this class full of little kids came on. They were probably 7 or 8, and they were singing Frozen, and and then they had this little like competition sort of thing, and they were like, well, I was born in 2007, or I was born in 2008, and like and such pride with the year that they were born. And I thought, like, my soul chose to come to this planet in 1975 so that I could see Ronald Reagan and tree torns and Cabbage Patch Kids and the fall of the Berlin Wall and Michael Jackson and like all the things that were part of my generation's like coming of age. And when I pretend that I'm 7 years younger than I'm denying that thing that my soul chose, or that like part of the essence of what has made me who I am, part of it. And that's what I kept thinking when I would see this little bit of gray. And then I felt like a grief. That there was like something that was dying every time I wasn't allowing it to live.
Yeah.
Well,
for me, it's also, if I were lying about my age, I couldn't tell people the super cool concerts I've been to.
Yeah. Like what?
Like I saw Yes at Wembley in London. I never went to a Beatles concert, but they didn't break up until I was 8, so they were on the radio.
Right.
Like, so you can't.
Exactly.
I saw Bowie's dance tour.
Wow.
Let's Dance.
I was just playing that album.
There you go. I saw it live.
Oh my God.
But, so there are these things you can't own, which is what you're saying. That you're like, you have no idea. I'm super cool. And with my students who are in their 20s and 30s, sometimes they sort of make up a story about me because I look middle-aged. And one of them is that I must somehow be stodgy, or, you know what I mean? And I find this ridiculous because what my answer to them is, honey, I lived in New York in the 80s. This is like New York City in the 1980s. There isn't anything I haven't seen or experienced. And to me, this is a much more conservative generation coming up.
I agree.
And so it's again, that's the story that's what I meant by, even if you can't see yourself, the way that people treat you tells you that you're middle-aged. My students thinking that I must somehow be
uncool.
Well, they think that to begin with. They make up that story when they see how I look.
Right.
And then after a while, that falls away, which is a great thing. And then they think I'm unconventional, quote unquote, which means I'm not like the other middle-aged ladies.
Right. Who are all way cooler.
Exactly.
Yeah, I was actually watching that documentary on Studio 54 that came out not too
I
long
was
ago.
there. Yeah.
I remember you said that in one of your talks I was listening to, and I was like, oh my God, that's the epitome of cool to me. And I posted on Instagram a little clip of the film, and I was like, just a reminder to all of us that, like, my parents' generation, our parents' generation invented fucking cool. So, like, I don't know what we think we're doing right now, you know? Because that's, like, whatever it was, I'm sure in the moment felt special, but not precious, you know? Like, it just was a bunch of freaks finding each other. And I don't know if my generation's a real interesting one. We're kind of stuck in between the generations everyone talks about, you know? The boomers.
So what generation is it?
Well, I don't know. I
'Cause
think
you're right one below me, probably,
yeah,
right?
I'm 43. Well, there's Generation X. Are you
I'm on at the very end of baby boomer. So what's after baby
X.
boomer? I'm generation I'm on the cusp of baby boomer and generation X.
and I'm like in between X and millennials. And so, you know, X had its own thing, but we don't really have a thing. Like there's some, but my generation's, you know, interesting still. I am grateful to be part of this one, but I don't know, whatever. It's just my ego wanting to be like cooler than I am.
we're doing a podcast in a closet. That's pretty damn cool. Is it cool? It's very cool.
Okay, thank you. I feel like it could be cooler if I had more costumes, maybe. Well, I do have a rooster shirt, so that's
There you go.
got to stand for something. So in terms of like you're my first guest. I got to show the rooster. You're my first guest that has really well, maybe my second guest. Maybe my third. Never mind. You're not special either. But you've been in it in various capacities for how long?
In the industry?
Like acting, yeah.
I started out as an actor in New York City in 1982. I went to Circle in the Square, got trained as an actor. And so I did the whole very classical training thing. So I've been in it for a long time.
Okay, so you walked through the 40 cutoff. Were you still acting at 40?
That's pretty much where the cutoff happened. It kind of happened naturally because I got pregnant. So when I'm talking to my students that I have who are in their 20s and 30s, I always say I was an actor and then I was the victim of a terrible accident. And I say, this is my joke. I turned 40. But also I was pregnant. I have pretty much let acting go in my mind. And to me, it didn't have much to do with my age. Although if I look back on it, I was a sketch actress or a sketch comedy person, and that's not really an older person field. I don't know that I processed that, but it's certainly, I mean, you know, a 40-year-old woman going into a casting director's office with her bag of wigs starts to look a little weird and doing different characters, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we all become bag ladies eventually.
Yeah, exactly.
I did a class recently, characters and impressions, because I wanted some like comedy. It just helps so much with writing when you take any kind of improv, whatever. It was writing monologues. And I did this one character, and the teacher said, oh, I don't even know if I want to give this note, but like I feel like she's a little young for you. Because I was, you know, like one of these girls who's just like, blah, 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 like that, blah, blah, whatever girl, the like Malibu girl. But then, you know, another guy in the class, and I took the note because as an artist, I'm really interested in dropping that young, placating, feeling like I have to present in that way and finding out what's the rage and this shit that's really interesting at this stage of my life that I didn't feel I had permission to express. But afterward, when I was thinking about it, after this guy got up and did an older man in his 80s or something, I was like, how come he's allowed to play any age and I'm only allowed to play mine? What's that about?
Oh, it's about the perception from the general society that women, when they try to look or be younger, are somehow ridiculous if they don't carry it off.
Right.
I mean, we try, or women do in general try, but in the end, that it's somehow foolish and ridiculous. I mean, Trump says that every day, some way or another, to women, the way that he treats older women, and, you know, the way that he talks about them, as if they're, because once you're sexually non-viable, you are silly, ridiculous. You should disappear.
You have no value. So I'm struggling with, like, how to change that. Not struggling. I'm trying to figure out how to change that. And I oscillate between, okay, well, maybe I'll just be like as sexually aggressive as I can and continue down the road where I was with trying to work out whatever my, like, I rap because it gives me permission to be sexual, masculine, and angry, and in a space where no one can touch me because I'm on a stage. Because when I do those things in public, the response is not good, or just annoying. So there's an option of continuing to get more ridiculous and push it in people's faces and be like, I'm 43, my child is your age, and you're sexually attracted to me. Is that confusing to you? Let me push that button a little harder. I want people to reframe their experience of a woman at a certain age. Why then am I still attaching myself to the worth being only about being fuckable? You know, there's still this, like, thing in me that has to be the validation has to come that way, as opposed to, like, you know, someone sitting down and telling me that they saw my work and they thought about the characters afterward, you know? Like, because it doesn't actually fucking mean anything to me if someone wants to fuck me. I don't care. Men, for the most part, will fuck anything.
I guess that's true.
You know?
I think because I don't think it's just women, but because women don't have other ways of being seen, it's because when somebody wants to fuck us, they're seeing us, that we're showing up. And I think that's very hard to give up, that notion. And I don't know that we ever do. I just think it's that women tie up that notion with how we look, how we present, as opposed to just simply connecting with someone and having sex with them, which is a wholly different thing.
Marianne Williamson always talks about relationships as a sexual relationship as a deepening of communication. And I think she says this, people confuse the sexual relationship with the communication. So back to your point about wanting to connect with people, it seems like such a visceral way to connect, and like you get that validation and you know that you're worthy of something, and it's like tangible. Whereas in so many other ways you can just interrupt all the connections that are happening around you with your bullshit stories and not even know that people are connecting with you or trying to connect with you. You know, go or look at your phone and you don't have to take that short path, you know, to finding what it is that you desire. We were talking earlier about pitching and writing and that kind of thing, and that was a big, scary place for me. Or maybe it's another story I'm inventing, probably. It's a story I'm inventing because I really do want to be pitching every day, and like my frustrations, and hopefully this will inspire some stories and ideas from you, are like still feeling like I need a champion. And I think it's the rot of this industry that is the mythology that we've been hanging on to for so long, is that you need to be discovered and enabled and empowered in some way. And it's like a dual-edged sword, because then everyone's looking for that person to do it for them. So I keep finding people who read my work or see my work and get excited and think they've found the thing that they are going to make money off of, or whatever they're going to get out of it, and then proceed to do nothing.
How does that break down?
Well, it's like, I call it cock blocking. So they'll say, because it's cocks blocking me from things as opposed to stopping me from getting cocks. They'll say, this is the person you should meet. I know this person and this person, and this, it's not me that can do the thing for you, but I can introduce you to the person who can do the thing for you and make the dream come true, be the EP, be the showrunner, whatever the thing is that they perceive that I'm lacking or that they perceive would be the right support for me. I don't want to say it's only that way, but, and then they just don't do anything. So they'll call me and check in with me and tell me about more people they know and more ideas and more whatever, but it's just like never taking the action or never like, and I don't understand this, and I've run into it like it's just constant.
Well, I think that I've certainly run into it before. I have a really solid, wonderful representation now, and maybe it's because I've run into it before that I always. My first question when somebody wants to represent me or work with me is, what if this fails? What are we going to do then? Because I don't want to develop a relationship with somebody who's just going to jump ship. And both of the people that I work with now have stood by me like through thick and thin, through rejections as well as triumphs. So I think in terms of your question, there are two things that go on. There's the pragmatic end of it, which is that, and this is what artists have struggled with since, since Van Gogh and before. We have always needed patrons, right?
Yes.
Because we're not very good at living in the real world, and we do live in a real world, so we do have to be concerned about paying our rent and stuff like that. So the pragmatic arm is off, that it makes sense to follow those leads. I don't expect somebody to save me or I still expect to work very hard, but I find that I have to exist in the real world. The artist in me, though, never pays attention, certainly initially, to the marketplace or what I think will sell. And that's the only way that I make it as an artist and I'm a terrible seller, actually, in general, even though I've sold 7 pilots. The only reason why I sell anything, myself or my book or anything, is because I'm so goddamn passionate about what I'm saying that I forget to be self-conscious. So I'm not aware that I'm selling it. I'm just so excited about the world that I'm creating, or even more than the world that I'm creating, the thing I'm trying to say. Because to me, it's the deepest, most amazing. I find my thoughts the most fascinating on the planet, and I don't necessarily mean that I sit there in some megalomaniacal world thinking I'm the only one, but just because I've spent a lot of time with myself, and I always assume that if it matters to me, it matters to somebody else out there, because we are connected, because we do have similar experiences with life. So if it means something to me, I'm pretty sure it does to somebody else.
Agreed. That's this podcast for me. I didn't expect anyone to care. But so many people are like, I'm crying and I love the song and like, when's the next one? Like, it's helping.
Sure.
Which is just gravy on the working my shit out, which is the same process that writing is. It's like I get to express all the nuances of my own character in all these other characters, right? So 7 pilots, did any of them go to series?
No, I shot one, and then none of them went to series. No.
Can you tell me about those experiences, and like, because I've had 2 shows, 1 season of each. Small one was like a sketch show, and one's a talk show, and like the heartbreak or the slow death, the slow death of the thing. I mean, what's the key? Is it like just never letting the characters die in your heart? Is it like how?
Well, the first one that I shot was actually, I was a member of a 2-person comedy act that we got to shoot. It was so exciting to me. I think I was disappointed when it didn't go to series, but I was pregnant for one thing, so I was distracted. But also, I just assumed that there would be more opportunities. So I did that Hollywood thing of, oh, I'm the sort of person who makes pilots. That's what I do now, right? Because I just made one,
Right.
which is ridiculous because
Right.
it doesn't always work that way. I think the biggest heartbreak was my first one based on my book, and partly because I was writing for HBO, which was just such a lovely artistic home, and because there was so much of a momentum underneath the whole thing talking about casting. I had a great showrunner, and it all looked like it was going to happen. So that was shocking, devastating, not just to me, but all of my representation. They had all expected it to move on. That was devastating. But then I was represented by my manager, Adam Peck, who I was talking about. It was one of those people who I asked that question, what happens if it dies? And he just took it up again and sold it again and just sold it twice more. And I think he really had a heart for it and believed in it and believed in me. And then by the time the third one was over, I was done with the story. I was done with it. I don't know if you've had that experience, but
Yeah.
but creative ventures also die a natural death. They
Yeah.
do. I was ready to tell a more nuanced story,
Yeah.
and I trust the process as an artist. That everything that I love the book that I just published very much, and I'm sort of letting it go into its own world now, but I'm wholly and completely convinced that my next book is going to be so much better because of everything I learned. And so I'm excited about that now, and I can sort of let that.
Yeah, I had this experience. I did a table read last week with this cheerleading show, and the actors got into a heated debate because I asked them for notes afterward. It was insane. They didn't even know each other, and they were all so invested, and it was great. And I just was sort of sitting back and being like, "This is interesting," but also I don't feel. I think because of what you're saying, like, because it's the gestation process is like just that. It's you're creating a child in a world, and then once it goes out and starts interacting with the world, it's you can love it and nurture it, but it's really not up to you anymore, right? The art belongs to the observer. But I know that as an artist, I came home that night and some of my friends were concerned. Like, they were like, "Are you okay after that, intense feedback?" And I was like, "Yeah, I'm excited that people are that inspired to argue about what direction it should go in." And my artist was like, "I don't actually give a shit what anyone thinks. I'll take the notes if they're in the best interest of the project. I don't take any of it personally, and I feel grateful that was like just a class in making my writing better. But at the end of the day, I'm going to write for another 40 years. And this is just one step on that road. And like, I'm just so grateful to understand that now. I don't know if I ever would have been able to walk through this fire if I didn't come to this point. Because the way it was with the first show, fighting for every line and thinking about the presentation of the thing and how it ends up and what people think of me, and is it going to get, whoever's attention, and they'll want to work with me next, and like, it's just all that shit never manifests the way you think it's going to. And
No, it
I wish
doesn't.
I just had enjoyed my time on set more, and hopefully I'll get a chance to do it again. But like, I totally understand what you're saying about the like, it's like those people who believe that universes live on their skin. Like, little, do you know about
like
this?
Horton Hears a Who? type
Yeah.
thing? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
That there's like,
I suppose that's
they're like their
possible.
own.
Yeah, sure.
It's like all of our stories are like in our body, and then they leave, they do. Like Mother, for example, the first show that I did was about a housewife who fantasizes about being a rapper. And it made so much sense to me because I was rapping and like look like a housewife and all the, whatever. And it was like everyone got so jazzed about it when I pitched it because it was interesting marriage of worlds that I mistook it for my only offering.
Right.
Right?
We all. I think when we're new, we think that.
Yeah.
And yeah, and we don't realize that. And to me, that I think that it's all a morphing of the next thing, because not just in terms of style, technique, and craft, like I'm just better, but also I feel like the same themes and the same things that I want to explore are all connected to something that I'm trying to figure out in this lifetime type thing, if you even get Buddhist about it. Like I've got artistic questions that I need to answer. And so I see the next iteration of that as just still a line. I can draw a line from the last project to the next project. And it's just a matter of honing something.
And have you been able to articulate what those artistic questions are?
I know that I am very interested in things that are connected. I'm interested in personal authenticity, really getting to be honest with yourself. I find this process very difficult. And that's why aging is helpful, because I think we get better at it if we're conscious of it. So I'm interested in questions of authenticity and also of redemption. And I think they're related. That we can make up mistakes. We can fuck up royally and still learn something and become fuller, more helpful human beings at the end of all of it, is to me a story that I keep telling over and over again.
It's like the dance between, well, in characters, it often plays out as the dance between being conscious and unconscious, going from unconscious to conscious, or, you know, and the supporting characters are often the unconscious ones. But then there's the whole thing, again, to talk about Marianne, who I talk about all the time on here. Just because you're conscious of your neurosis doesn't make it go away.
No, it doesn't necessarily, but you can't do anything about it if you're not.
Right.
So it's the starting point, I guess. And I don't know how other people deal with their own neurosis if they're not artists, because mine become characters. I mean, all of the characters in my book are me.
Yeah.
And so that's where it feeds into it. So it's like your strength is your weakness. My weakness, according to all of the people who love me, is that I have no layer between myself and my emotional life. And my mother used to call me an emotional terrorist.
Oh my God.
Because if I cried or reacted or whatever, so that's where my neurosis lives, apparently. And I always found that deeply embarrassing, that I couldn't hide, you know, that I'd laugh too loud, cry too loud, double over in pain, that this was the shameful part of me. And yet that neurosis, and I don't even think it's a neurosis, but it would be to other people, is what makes me an artist. And that's exactly what I funnel into my storytelling. So I wouldn't be as good at my craft if that neurosis wasn't there.
It's a superpower.
Thank you. I'm beginning to accept that. It's hard because, you know, all these things, my mother's Swedish.
Oh.
So the idea that I can't, you know, marshal myself is just deeply shameful to her.
As I mentioned earlier, I watched my first Cassavetes film opening night, and there's this speech in it about, I don't want to call it a speech because it sounds disrespectful of their process, but about her, Jenny Rowland's emotional life, or the character, I can't remember the character's name, but she says the younger version of herself was so close to her emotions, and now this version is not, she feels like she's not as connected as a middle-aged woman, and that she's losing that. And as a matter of fact, again, talk about Marianne, I went to a seminar of hers recently, a goddess workshop. I was talking to her afterward, and I've been going to her lectures for 20 years. And I said, you know, when I first met you, got you to sign a book, I started crying immediately. And you were just so lovely and whatever. And I said, now I see the young women in the audience and they go to speak and they just cry. And I feel like I found my voice, actually got on stage and spoke about some memories that I had of the women in my family being competitive with each other and how it's affected me, and violently competitive with each other and how it's affected me as an adult and not wanting to compete with other women. but being able to do it with breath and presence and not going into drama and just like talking about it to move through it because I wanted it out of my body. And she was like, but isn't it sweet when they cry? You know, like there's something really sweet about that like blanket of emotion that just kind of rolls around with you when you're in your 20s. And one of my fears, and I think one of the reasons why I've held on to my drama for so long, is connected to being an artist and thinking that if I don't stay sharp emotionally, and by sharp emotionally I mean constantly in touch with my drama, because there's two different emotional lives, right? There's one that's fabricated and there's one that's just the moving of like universal energy through you that is of the moment, and that's truthful. And I feel like, you know, like that choice we're constantly making as artists to go down the path of the thing that I know that's safe and the thing that I don't know that where it's going to go, and allowing the inspiration to find me and the emotion to find me and whatever. It's like learning to trust that space as an artist is the same walk, I think, as like going through middle age and aging. But it feels so much safer to stay in your stories and your drama and the things that you know? Mm-hmm. And so it's like, you know, those of us who become artists, we start out like in the pool of emotions and sort of sometimes swimming or floating and sometimes flailing, right? And that's the emotional life. But the fucking point I'm trying to make is that I take so much, it makes me feel grateful or like excited to hear you say that, because if you still feel like your emotions are at the ready, and I feel just from sitting with you, like your presence as an artist, and from reading your work and seeing your work on television, like you're not bullshitting. No. You know?
Or I hope not. I mean, I'm sure there's a level of bullshit and everything. I mean, that's the process, sure, right? But no, for the most part, no.
But you're alive emotionally. For you to say that that's still a thing people comment on, I'm like, yay, I'm not going to die. Like, you know, if I just like am unaffected, if my bullshit meter is more finely tuned, it doesn't mean that I'm going to be like unimpressed for the rest of my life.
Oh, I don't think so. No. Well, and the other thing is that the older you get, there's more loss. Uh-huh. And so if you're present for that loss, then that breaks down the tissue between you and the world. I mean, I think there's so much loss as you get older. And so, yeah, you either shove it aside or you walk through it. And I think if you walk through it, it's hard not to stay connected to the world when you've lost that much. And I don't mean that I've lost any more than anybody else. Yeah. I'm just, you know, I buried 3 or 4 friends last year. That's just by virtue of my age. 58. Yeah. So
my mom too. My mom's 64.
Yeah, it starts happening. My husband keeps saying that, as a matter of fact. He keeps saying every time we lose a friend, he's like, it's happening. like people are just going to be dropping all over the place. Yeah. Like, this is it. Grab onto this, you know, your armchair, you know.
Yeah. I mean, that's actually one of the things that makes me think I want to find a partner, like a life partner, is to have someone to walk through that with, because it's a coming. I mean, I have a big family, and we've lost 3 or 4 last year too, and my mom's dog. It's funny, my mom lost her brother, her uncle, and one of her best friends, and her dog last year. And the dog was the thing. I mean, everything was hard, but she's like, the dog was next level. Like I mean, was not ready for that at all, because he was just constantly by her side, you know. So it's going to get worse. I'm getting older. My hair is going gray. Everyone's going to die. And I might never get any pilots made to series. But my artist is happier than she's ever been.
Well, and you've seen that. Since you're interested in aging, I'm sure you've seen that happiness curve.
Yeah.
And I believe it. Because I experience it. It doesn't mean that there isn't all that loss, and maybe the world won't catch up to the fact that, aging women are awesome in time for me to reap the benefits of that. But it's all the stuff you're talking about, shedding the expectations based on things that aren't organically authentic to ourselves is such a freeing thing. And I find it freeing to know that I'm not going to be on this planet for much longer. I really do. I find it a very freeing thing.
Why?
Well, because it's getting rid of the bullshit. It used to be that if a choice took 3 years to muddle through, then what's 3 years? Well, now 3 years is very precious to me. So I'm making choices based on, is that really what I want my life to look like? And that's fun, because I'm actually consciously creating my life rather than waiting for, a producer to produce my thing, or you know what I mean? Like I'm creating it because I don't have the time to sit around by the phone and wait for somebody to say yes to me.
Yeah, I feel that. That's exactly where I'm at. I don't care if I have to shoot it on my phone. I'm going to bring the characters to life. And then you also decide and figure out what characters should live. Because some of them don't need to. Some series maybe don't need to live. They're just part of the process of getting to the next thing, whatever that next thing is.
Yeah.
Brett, I have you locked in my closet.
You do.
It's not locked, but the door's kind of barricaded. And I secretly want to keep you here for 6 hours, but I know I can't because I want to take pictures of you, and I know you have other things to do with your life. But I'm just so grateful that you came here today.
You. It was a lot of fun sitting in your closet. It truly was.
Thank you.
And it's easy to talk to you.
Thank you.
Because I can be a little shy. So if this is going well, it's largely due to you.
Oh, thank you. I never would have guessed that you were shy. And I'm just grateful. And I hope that I get to have you back again with your next book or your next show, or just to talk when I have more questions, because I feel like you know a lot of things that I didn't even think of asking because I'm in the water still,
Yeah.
Yeah. So
We all are.
Thank you.
We all are in the water.
That makes me feel better,
that's
too.
The whole. If you ever read his Kenyan address, he uses the mantra of saying to yourself, "This is water. This is water." Being conscious of what's around you.
The death of the ego. Tinseltown.